Hey everyone, Ben Dorr here with Minnesota Gun Rights, and I've got some exciting news for gun owners and some not so exciting news in House District 54A. This is Shakopee coming up for your August 9th Republican primary. I've got information if you love your Second Amendment freedoms, if you love your Constitution, if you're one of us, you're going to want to listen to this video all the way to the end, so let's get started right now. All right, everybody, as I said, I'm Ben Dorr with Minnesota Gun Rights, and our job as a Second Amendment organization at election time is to send out candidate surveys to everybody running for office. We sent one to Representative Erik Mortensen, we sent one to Bob, and we asked them where they stood on major Second Amendment issues. It's our job as an issue advocacy organization to report that information to gun owners in the district so that you guys know where the candidates stand. Now, again, we sent a survey to both candidates for office, and we have some survey results, but on top of that, we take into account their time in office, if they're incumbent, if they've ever held office. We kind of take all of this history into account and tell you what we know about these candidates. Now, currently, Erik Mortensen is the sitting state representative for House District 54A, but it just so happens that Bob over here was also a state representative at one point in time. Now, so that gives us a lot of information to work with. I'm going to try to condense it down very closely for you so you have all the facts. Now, the candidate survey, it's a beautiful candidate survey. We have 10 questions in there. I'm not going to go through all 10 of them. I don't want this to drag on for 100 years for you guys, but I did break down a few of the questions that are in the survey, and I'm going to give you some of their responses on these issues, okay? So we're going to start with Representative Mortensen. Now, one of the first questions we asked him was, what would he do when red flag gun confiscation laws comes to the House floor for a vote, okay? Red flag laws, as we all know, this is being pushed by the radical left and rhinos on the right all across the country. We just had $750 million worth of red flag gun confiscation funding signed into law by dopey Joe Biden just the other day. And it wasn't just Democrats who passed that stuff. It was people like Lindsey Graham, Mitt Romney, many others who supported that red flag gun confiscation funding. And the point is to bribe states like Minnesota into passing red flag laws. And so what would happen when red flags comes to the floor? A no vote. Obviously, that's how things would be. Now, moving on, we have stand your ground law. Now, not only did he fill out his candidate survey 100% pro-gun and promise to be the state's leading sponsor of stand your ground law, but he is the state's leading sponsor. He introduced a phenomenal stand your ground law bill into the legislature last year. It's a fantastic piece of legislation, and of course, Democrats are trying to kill this legislation. They don't want this stuff to pass, but he pushed this bill. He loves stand your ground law, and that's fantastic. Okay, next thing, and this is so important, constitutional carry law. Okay, I think everybody knows what constitutional carry is. It simply says that if you're legal to own a firearm, you can carry it without asking government for permission. You don't need a permit if you don't want one. Now, of course, if you want to get a permit, you can still get one for reciprocity reasons or whatever else you like, and you can still do that under Representative Mortensen's constitutional carry bill. But he is 100% in support of constitutional carry because, well, he already sponsored the bill. Now, we have the assault weapons ban. Okay, this is obviously extremely important. We all know what's happening in D.C. We all know what's happening across our country. Politicians, rhinos, Democrats, and the radical left want to take away, they call them assault weapons, but really what it is a bill that bans, they got semi-automatic pistols in there, there's shotguns in there, deer rifles. So maybe you're one of those people who goes, well, we don't need no AR-15s. They're not talking about AR-15s. This so-called assault weapons ban targets most of our common use firearms that we all have. Now, they want to pass this type of garbage in the state legislature as well. And Erik Mortensen has promised to be an absolute hell no over my dead body vote on the so-called assault weapons ban bill. And now this last one is kind of a curious one. It's mental health gun control. This is a very important thing because what we have happening a lot is the radical left is introducing these so-called mental health bills that are designed to take guns away from people who have mental health issues. Now, it sounds good on the face of it, and we already do have a process in place whereby people who are mentally defective can have their firearms removed if a judge orders it. So they have to be adjudicated mentally deficient. But when the left talks about mental health legislation and when it comes to guns, what they're talking about is having left-wing doctors and left-wing professionals sit there and say, well, this guy, he voted for Donald Trump. He's clearly, this guy I know he owns a bunch of guns. The last time he was in here, he was trash-talking Joe Biden and our $5 gas out here. This guy is mentally defective. And they want and they will take away our firearms simply because of the way we look, because of our politics, because of the things that we've said, the frustrations we've expressed with our government. So when it comes to mental health gun control, Erik Mortensen is an absolute hell no, and I know that he voted no just this last legislative session. He voted no on a major piece of mental health gun control in the legislature. And the list goes on. He's also the chief sponsor for the first time in Minnesota history. He's the chief sponsor of the Second Amendment Preservation Act. Now, this bill, our sister organization with the Missouri Firearms Coalition, passed the country's best Second Amendment Preservation Act bill that stops the federal government from enforcing their federal gun control in the state of Missouri. Specifically, it says that Missouri cops won't use Missouri funds to implement federal gun control. It's a phenomenal piece of legislation. The Department of Justice has been suing the state of Missouri and losing over and over in court down in Missouri because they're so ticked off that they can't infringe on the Second Amendment rights of Missourians. So, Erik Mortensen is the lead sponsor of Minnesota's very first Second Amendment Preservation Act in the state of Minnesota. So this is phenomenal legislation, and we're going to keep fighting for it all the way across the board. Now, going over to Bob, we have to talk about Bob a bit because, as we know, Bob Loonan was once a state representative himself. He lost the party's endorsement. He eventually, he's lost kind of many times in a row since he used to be a state representative. But I want to start here with the mental health gun control. Just 3 days ago, he was on his Bob Loonan for Minnesota House Facebook page advocating on behalf of mental health gun control. And he can beat around that bush if he wants. He can say it's not gun control. We know how this process works, and when politicians talk about mental health when it comes to the Second Amendment, they're talking about taking away our firearms or supporting legislation that allows other bureaucrats to have those firearms taken away. So he's obviously bad when it comes to mental health gun control. But more than that, he didn't fill out his Minnesota gun rights candidate survey at all. Not a word. And I think I know exactly why. Because I think a lot of gun owners know, a lot of patriots, a lot of freedom-loving Republican types in this state, and I'm one of them. I love my Second Amendment. I love my freedom. I love my state. I love my country. I've been frustrated with rhino Republicans going up to St. Paul, screwing over gun owners, patriots, taxpayers, on pro-life issues, many things like that. And the rhinos up there, they don't like filling out Minnesota gun rights candidate survey. Because if Bob Loonan filled out his survey 100%, if he put his name on it and then he went and betrayed gun owners, we would hold him accountable for that. We're not just going to cover it up and pretend it didn't happen. And politicians know that we'll hold them accountable. Representative Mortensen knows we will hold him accountable if he betrayed his oath of office. He knows it very well. Bob Loonan also knows that. And so that's why he did not fill out his Minnesota gun rights candidate questionnaire. If I'm wrong, Bob, please feel free to fill it out and send it our way. We'd love to get a 100% candidate survey from you. Get that stuff filled out. But he didn't fill it out. He won't tell gun owners where he stands on these issues. And what's more, we'll just start at the top. When it comes to these issues like red flag laws, again, we don't know what Bob Loonan would do if he was in office. We have rhino Republicans voting for this stuff all across the country. We don't need red flag laws in the state of Minnesota. We don't need politicians stabbing us in the back and voting for this stuff like so many Republicans and Democrats are doing. And so we don't know where Bob Loonan stands on red flag gun confiscation laws. When it comes to stand your ground law, it's kind of the same story. Now, I'm sure as a state representative, I'm pretty sure Bob has co-sponsored a pro-gun bill here and co-sponsored a pro-gun bill there. But when he was in office, we actually had a Republican majority in the Minnesota House. So Bob Loonan gets upset and says, well, Erik Mortensen's pro-gun bills aren't passing. Well, that's because the entire time that Representative Mortensen has been in office, Democrats have had control of the House and won't move any pro-gun legislation at all. But when Bob Loonan was in office, like 2017, 2018, we had a Republican majority by a large margin. We also had a Republican majority in the Senate at that time, and we had weak Democrat Governor Marblemouth Mark Dayton, as we all remember. But nobody, Bob Loonan, did not put stand your ground or constitutional carry on the House floor for a vote. He didn't force the vote. He didn't push for it. In fact, when Bob Loonan was running for office last time, I actually had the opportunity to speak with him at his dining room table. We were out canvassing the district, letting folks know where the candidates stood on the issues. We had some Minnesota gun rights flyers. It's what we do. And I just so happened onto Bob Loonan's house. And he was there at his table. He saw me walk up to the door. I couldn't believe it. And so he opened the door and he politely invited me in. He was very nice. And so Bob invited me into his house. And you know, he wasn't very happy because we were telling voters that he hadn't been strong on the Second Amendment, that he hadn't been pushing for any pro-gun bills. And so he wanted to kind of chastise me for this at that time. And I asked him point blank, I said, Bob, I said, just tell me, I said, have you ever in your caucus meetings, when you're in the legislature, when you're standing there talking to caucus leadership and Kurt Dowd, who was the speaker at that time, I said, have you ever told them, look guys, we need to put pro-gun bills on the floor for a vote? I said, have you ever done this in those private meetings when it's just you and your legislative colleagues? And to Bob's credit, he looked me right in the face and he said, no, I have not. So he told me the truth. He told me the truth. And again, that's to Bob's credit. He said, no, I have not ever actually advocated on behalf of these Second Amendment issues. And if you want to know, it wasn't just him and I either there. If you want to ask Senator Erik Pratt, who's also being challenged right now. He was sitting at the table. You can ask him if that's how the conversation went, because it was the three of us there at that time. So he said no. He said, no, I've never done that. I've never asked or pushed or told or insisted that legislative leaders actually pass any pro-gun bills. So that's on Bob there. So that was stand your ground. And now when it comes to constitutional carry, I'll play a video clip right here. You can hear it for yourself.
I don't support the constitutional carry bill the way it is written right now. Not everyone should be able to buy any gun and carry it anywhere.
And so that was a debate between Representative Mortensen and Bob Loonan that happened just a while back, and he's flat out telling the public that he doesn't support constitutional carry. Now he came back and he tried to clarify his statements, and but he was straight up misunderstood what constitutional carry even does. It doesn't give guns to everybody. It says if you're legally able to own one, you can legally carry that firearm without having to get a permit. So it doesn't give guns to everyone, doesn't give guns to felons and all of these things that people say. Those are Democrat talking points. So when it comes to constitutional carry, he straight up said, I don't support it. Well, now he says he does support it. But he didn't fill out his survey. He won't put his name on paper. He told us when he was in the legislature, he didn't advocate to actually pass any of the pro-gun bills. When we had the majority, and he's angry at Representative Mortensen for not passing pro-gun bills, but the Democrats have had control of the chamber the entire time, so I don't know how pro-gun bills were supposed to pass in the House in those circumstances. So when you take it all together, what we have here is Representative Mortensen is the state's leading sponsor on major pro-gun bills like Stand Your Ground, constitutional carry, and the Second Amendment Preservation Act, and he actively stood up as a state representative and opposed all the gun control legislation. He's against mental health gun control, straight up. And then we have former state representative Bob Loonan, and I think he might teach some sort of hunter safety courses. I'm not saying he's a radical lefty by any means, but I am saying that as a state representative, he was extremely soft on the Second Amendment, very soft. And this is the time in the legislature for fighters. We need to fight for the Second Amendment. If we don't fight for it, our children won't have those freedoms. Our grandchildren won't have those freedoms if we don't fight for them. That's what Minnesota Gun Rights exists to do. And Bob was honest enough to tell me to my face that he did not fight for gun owners. And now, just in the last few days, Bob Loonan has said that he supports and wants to push for some form of mental health legislation, which is code word for gun control. And he also didn't know and doesn't support constitutional carry. So, a couple of things. It's very frustrating, I'll be honest with you. If you see Representative Mortensen out on the campaign trail, do us a favor, thank him for being such a huge supporter of our Second Amendment rights. It's a huge thing to stand up and do the things that he has done. And he did. He introduced these pro-gun bills like he promised he would do, and he'll continue to do so if he wins the election. And if you see Bob Loonan, tell him to apologize for being bad on mental health, for being bad on constitutional carry, for not filling out his Minnesota Gun Rights candidate survey, and also for not advocating to his own caucus members when Republicans had the majority to pass these pro-gun bills. Okay? Do those two things. And I'm sorry this video is a little bit longer than I wanted it to be, but I wanted to make sure everybody had the facts, and you have to lay out the history as well as the survey results. So when it comes time, guys, on August 9, when you go to the polls, go and vote pro-gun.